So things can change. And apparently, when it comes to the ceasefire in Gaza, things have changed. Now, everybody's melting down over the story that I'm about to explain to you. And I'm woman enough to admit, you know, I told you guys this before. I will give credit where credit is due, regardless if I voted for that person, if I like that person or not. And tonight's going to be one of those nights where I'm going to have to give credit where credit is due. Doesn't mean I approve of everything, but we're going to get into the details. But I will give credit where it's due. First, we got to go through the timeline. Let's start back. It was recently at Trump's press conference, he made this comment that made people think otherwise. Listen to this.
Tuesday.
If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone.
A bill.
Let's go back just a little bit here because I do want to increase the volume on this one. And it could just be, sometimes these videos can be a little
Gaza. President-elect Donald Trump giving the terror organization this warning on Tuesday.
If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone.
A billboard celebrating Trump's comments put up in Tel Aviv.
Okay, so they put up a billboard celebrating what he said there. Just a flashback. We ain't got to go through the whole thing, but reminder that Donald Trump said that, right? So a lot of people said that Trump would be worse with the Gaza situation, and that's why you should vote for Kamala Harris because of that reason. When I had this conversation with Mark Lamont Hill on his show, you know, I said, how much worse can you get? Because genocide is genocide. Gaza is already pretty much flattened. It pretty much does look like a parking lot. They've been starving people. They've been bombing people. I'm like, how much worse can you make it in Gaza compared to what has already happened, right? So that was my take on it. And then something happened. Trump made that comment, and then all of a sudden he posted this video of Jeffrey Sachs on Truth Social. And people kind of wondered, is he trying to send some type of a message? And if so, what message was he trying to send? So here's the video that he shared on Truth Social of Professor Jeffrey Sachs.
For the war in Syria. And you may actually hear from grown-up reporters who are lying through their teeth or ignorant beyond imagining that, oh, the war in Syria, yes, Russia intervened in Syria. Well, do you know that that Obama tasked the CIA to overthrow the Syrian government, starting 4 years before Russia intervened? What kind of nonsense is that? And how many times did the New York Times report on Operation Timber Sycamore, which was the presidential order to the CIA to overthrow Bashar al-Assad? 3 times in 10 years. This is not democracy. This is a game. And it's a game of narrative. Why did the U.S. invade Iraq in 2003? Well, first of all, it was completely phony pretenses. It wasn't, oh, we were so wrong, they didn't have weapons of mass destruction. They actually did focus groups in the fall of 2002 to find out what would sell that war to the American people. Abe Schultzky, if you want to know the name of the PR genius. They did focus groups on the war. They wanted the war all the time. They had to figure out how to sell the war to the American people, how to scare the shit out of the American people. It was a phony war. Where did that war come from? You know what? It's quite surprising. That war came from Netanyahu, actually. You know that? It's weird. And the way it is that Netanyahu had from 1995 onward the theory that the only way we're going to get rid of Hamas and Hezbollah is by toppling the governments that support them. That's Iraq, Syria, and Iran.
So we'll pause it there for just a second. But many people were asking, okay, this is Jeffrey Sachs criticizing Netanyahu, blaming him for the Iraq war, saying that it was his idea. And people were like, why would Donald Trump post that, knowing he's about to resume his position in the White House, knowing that he's working with Netanyahu behind the scenes. He told him, of course, we'll give Israel what it needs, right? Why would he post that? What message was he trying to send? Let's continue.
And the guy's nothing if not obsessive. And he's still trying to get us to fight Iran this day, this week. He's a deep, dark son of a bitch, sorry to tell you. Because he's gotten us into endless wars, and because of the power of all of this in the U.S. politics, he's gotten his way. But that war was totally phony. So what is this democracy versus dictatorship? Come on, these are not even sensible terms.
That was the video that gave many people pause. It's not like Jeffrey Sachs said just one thing there about Netanyahu. He said multiple things about Netanyahu, even, of course, accusing him for the U.S. involvement in the Iraq war. So what was the message that maybe he was trying to send? Then there was this. And this is the video I think that gave a lot of people pause. Thank you for sharing this, Noga. Stunned like the true believer he is, Netanyahu proxy Errol Siegel laments, "We're the first to pay a price for Trump's election. The deal is being forced upon us. We thought we'd take control of northern Gaza, that they'd let us impede humanitarian aid." Wasn't that the message that was sent? Didn't Donald Trump say that if he's president, he'll let them stop all of the aid going into Gaza, right? Does this sound familiar? Remember when Donald Trump was running in 2016? Remember the things that he said about North Korea? And he was like, oh yeah, we're going to go after them. And no, yeah. And then the moment that he was in office, he found some way to work with Kim Jong-un. He found a way to build some type of relationship with North Korea. Could it be possible that the same thing is happening now? I want to show you this video yourself so you can see it. I believe we'll put the captions on because he is speaking in Hebrew, if I remember correctly. So listen to this.
אמרתי כאן שהראשונים לשלם את מחיר הבחירה שלו יהיו האוקראינים, טעיתי. יכול להיות שמי שמשלמים ראשונים את מחיר הבחירה של טראמפ זה אנחנו, כי הוא בעצם העסקה הזאת, אני לא רוצה להגיד, ננסים להיכנס לתוכה, לא להשתמש במילים, וגם אני לא יודע את כל הפרטים, ולכן אני אהיה יותר זהיר וכו', אבל אני לא חושב שזה מה שאנחנו תכננו וזה מה שציפינו. חשבנו את דברים אחרים, חשבנו שנשתלט.
So he said, I don't think we planned or expected that we should have done other things. What matters is if we take control over northern Israel. Okay, he said they can allow us to, of course, reduce the humanitarian aid to these areas and thus reduce pressure on Hamas.
מה שקורה, וצריך להגיד את האמת לצופים. אם מיליון עזתים חוזרים בצפון הרצועה, צה"ל לא יחזור להילחם בצפון הרצועה. אתה לא תעשה את כל האירוע הזה מחדש, להוציא מיליון איש משם. זה לא יקרה. צריך להגיד את האמת. יכול להיות שישארו בחלקים, בפרימטר, בפילדלפי וכו'. אבל מיליון איש שחוזרים בצפון הרצועה, מסיים את הסיפור. ועוד דבר. בזה המשפחות החטופים כנראה צודקות. הנשק האסטרטגי של החמאס זה החטופים. הם לתמיד ישירו בידיהם קלפי מיקוח.
So this is the video that is giving people a lot of pause. So again, we're the first to pay a price for Trump's election. The deal is being forced upon us. We thought that we would take control of northern Gaza, that they'd let us impede humanitarian aid. So this is Israel complaining because now they're saying they are forcing a deal upon us. That is Donald Trump. I see Biden trying to take credit for this. But you can even see it here from Ali. Ali says, not there yet, but we're closer than ever to a ceasefire due to two factors. One, steadfast resistance in Gaza, inflicting attrition, losses on enemy. Two, Donald Trump putting direct pressure on Israel that Joe Biden refused to do. There's an example here. Trump's Mideast envoy forced Netanyahu to accept a Gaza plan he repeatedly rejected. So let me say this again. Trump's Mideast envoy forced Netanyahu to accept a Gaza plan he repeatedly rejected. Israeli sources say that the involvement of the incoming U.S. administration led by Trump aggressive Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff revived hostage talks with Hamas, while Netanyahu's propaganda machine claims that Trump has left him no choice. What happens inside his coalition will determine whether the prime minister approves the deal. Everybody see what's happening here? And of course, shout out to Ali for sharing this information. In fact, Witkoff has forced Israel to accept a plan that Netanyahu had repeatedly rejected over the past year. And I want to get into this article here from Jeremy, because I want to get to that. Because what this shows you, ladies and gentlemen, as much as I don't like Trump, did not vote for Trump. If you're new, I didn't vote for Kamala either. So not a Democrat, was a Democrat, didn't vote for Kamala either. I voted for Jill Stein. As much as I don't, I have to admit something very important. If there's one thing that Donald Trump has showed us is what the president can do. The power of the president. Now, he wasn't the first. Don't forget that Ronald Reagan did this very same thing. Ronald Reagan picked up the phone, called Israel and said, that's it. That's enough. Not a fan of Ronald Reagan either, but still, that's enough. It's going too far. Israel is losing support. Too many people are being killed. I believe this was with the attack in Lebanon. Said, that's enough. Stop it. And just like that, it was done. As much as I've tried to tell people this over the past year, what Biden and Kamala could actually do, there were a number of people that were continuing to be stands for the Democratic Party that tried to bullshit me with these excuses. Give them time. Give them a chance. You don't know what's going to happen. They're trying their best. AOC told you on the stage of the Democratic National Convention that they were working tirelessly for a ceasefire, only to be pushed back against by one of her own comrades, Ilhan Omar, which said that is not true. And I told you over and over again, they were never working tirelessly for a ceasefire. That requires one phone call. I do need to remind you that Joe Biden just also gave Netanyahu more money, just gave him more billions at the end of 2024. That's not pushing towards a ceasefire. Now, Jeremy took a deep dive into this. I want to bring this up here. This is Jeremy Scahill from Drop Site News. I think you guys are familiar with him if you've been following Gaza. He's been talking about this for quite some bit. He said the Trump factor, Gaza ceasefire deal appears close. Donald Trump's decisive role in pushing forward the potential ceasefire is evidence that Joe Biden refused to use his full powers as president. Jeremy is on it. And I don't know where Jeremy stands politically, but he's with this particular issue, he has been on it. And it's funny, they put this picture here of Donald Trump with his hand over his head. Like, it reminds me of, do you guys remember the sitcom Martin? Remember Martin Lawrence? And Martin had this character that he played named Jerome. So Martin played different characters on the show, Shanae, Jerome. And Jerome used to do this thing where he would put his hand over his head and he would go, I'm an original player from the Himalayas. That's what this picture reminded me of. Now, I can't say it the way that Jerome can, I'm sorry. But that's what this picture reminded me of. This picture that they put here. Yes, Jerome's in the house. Watch your mouth. So, okay, so some of you remember. Okay, but listen to what Jeremy says here. The prospect for an agreement to halt Israel's war against the Palestinians of Gaza is at its most promising point in over a year. Sources close to Hamas negotiating team tell Dropsite News that on Monday, Hamas agreed to the framework text, including an exchange of captives and hostages, and had not requested any significant changes or amendments. But the devil, as always, is in the details. Many of the obstacles have been ironed out. This is coming from Ansari, the spokesperson for Qatar's foreign ministry. There are many pending issues, part of which is related to the implementation. We believe we have minimized many of the disagreements between both parties, and current discussions are focused on final details. We are the closest than at any time in the past to a deal. This war should have been over a long time ago, and it could have been over a long time ago. It wasn't, because Joe Biden, and Biden said Kamala Harris was a part of all of these decisions. Let's remember, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris never put this type of pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu. They were tiptoeing around this man. Joe Biden told you so himself. He said that he was a Zionist. Don't forget, I showed you what the Biden campaign website said about Israel and Gaza before his campaign staffers told him he had to remove it because it was insensitive to Palestinian Americans. Has always been a staunch Zionist. Never gave a damn about these people. They had no response to the protest because they weren't expecting that to happen. Their own staff admitted that. They weren't expecting the world to turn on Israel. Right? Shows you how out of touch they are. Palestinian negotiators told Dropsite they remain cautiously optimistic a deal will be signed, though they point to a previous rounds of ceasefire negotiations that saw Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu insert new demands in the 11th hour, effectively sabotaging the agreements. I hope Netanyahu won't play the same game of the last 15 months. Can you believe it's been this long? It's crazy. The most minute detail can undermine the negotiation. It is not about how big or small an issue it is. What is different this time, however, is that President-elect Donald Trump has made very clear his demand that a deal be reached before his inauguration on January 20th. The terms of the deal being negotiated are largely consistent with what was on the table last May when outgoing President Joe Biden first announced it, which goes to show you once again, this could have been done. Now, don't get it twisted. This doesn't mean that I believe that Donald Trump cares about the Palestinian people. I think that Donald Trump cares about how he looks and how this makes him look. And honestly, I don't think he wants to deal with this mess going into his presidential term. There's a lot of other things going on, but I don't think he wants to deal with this. So don't get it twisted, because I can see someone trying to clip this and say, oh, Sabby is standing for Trump and da-da-da. No, it's not that way at all. I'll give credit where credit is due. But I don't think he's doing this because he cares about the Palestinian people. I think he's doing it because he wants to look out for himself, right? He doesn't want to have to deal with this. It goes on to say, Biden allowed Netanyahu to steamroll him for months, rewarding Israel with billions of dollars in arms, transfers, and political support after rejecting that ceasefire deal. Since that time, tens of thousands of Palestinian civilians have been killed and maimed, and an unknown number of Israeli captives killed either by their captors or Israeli strikes. All the while, the administration and its backers repeatedly assured voters in the U.S. that Biden and Kamala were working tirelessly to achieve a ceasefire deal. That's another thing. I'm glad that he brought that up. As many times as he said, oh, I had a conversation with Netanyahu, we're going to have a come to Jesus moment. Every time that Netanyahu went against the negotiation, the U.S. response was to continue to give him weapons. So I'm not quite sure what Donald Trump said to Benjamin Netanyahu to make him change his mind. I would have liked to have been a fly on that wall. You know what I'm saying? Because it could have been something like, listen, motherfucker, We always see how Trump is on TV. I wonder if behind the scenes, Trump grabbed the phone and said, listen up, motherfucker. Didn't I tell you to fix this? Didn't I tell you to end this mess? I'm not dealing with this when I come into the White House. You listen to what I'm saying? Listen to me. And then someone walks into the room and he goes back to his Trump voice and goes, and we are going to do and get the deal done. That's what we're going to do. Get the deal. We're going to be great. Okay, I'll talk to you later. Now don't mess with me again. Next time I tell you I want something done, I want it done, damn it. We don't know. I don't know. Everybody got that other side of them, you know. Even you guys probably know some of the nicest people that you know, every now and then you might have caught that side of them. So I don't know what he said to him on the phone, but apparently it was enough to make members of his party come forward on Israeli television venting that we're being pushed into this. We're being forced into it, which means that Biden never forced them into it, which is what I have been saying all along. Now, I got criticized. I was shouted down. I was called a Republican. I was called all these different names because I said I'm going to vote for Jill Stein, who is right on this issue. And she's not a part of either of these two parties. And people said that I was trying to help Trump win and all this stuff because I was voting for Jill Stein. All the people who came to me with all this trash, what do you have to say now? Because whether you agree with Trump or not, what he is showing you is that a president can get certain things done if they are willing to do it. And Joe Biden was not willing to do it. So the fact that Trump emerged as a decisive player in pushing a potential ceasefire forward is evidence that Biden never used the full powers available to a sitting U.S. president to seal the deal in the summer. While Trump has publicly repeated his threat that he will unleash hell on Hamas if the Israeli hostages are not freed, his pressure has not been solely focused on Hamas. Trump and his aides have made clear to Netanyahu that the president-elect expects Israel to comply with his demands too. Everybody hear this? I understand there's been a handshake and they are getting it finished and maybe by the end of the week, Trump told Newsmax Monday night. So how is it again that he could do this, but Biden couldn't? It's not that Biden couldn't. He just didn't want to. I really do believe that Biden and Kamala Harris, they were planning to drag this out as long as possible. And honestly, had it not been for the protests, they probably would have let him go in even stronger than he did in the beginning. But because of the outcry from the public, then it was like, okay, now we got to try to get them to dial it back or make it look like we're trying to do something to put it into this. I mean, this is just, it's unbelievable. For sure, part of Trump's motivation involves humiliating Biden and claiming victory for freeing the hostages. That's it. That's what it is. I think what Trump is trying to do is to clean house and to start a new slate. And I'm sure he has a lot of ideas about how he's going to reward Israel and Netanyahu once this is done. That's another thing. There is going to be a reward for Israel. So don't think that Israel's not getting anything out of this deal. You can never trust what Netanyahu says or does, but I think the new factor here is really that the new Trump administration does not want the headache. And it tells you here that Steve Witkoff participated directly in the negotiations. And it goes on to say, let me just tell you what the deal is. According to the leaked draft, this is a draft, 3 phases agreement framework. This is how this will work. Hamas will release 33 Israeli held in Gaza. So 33 hostages held in Gaza, some alive and some deceased. And this is what I was saying before. How do we know all those hostages are still alive? Because if they were starving the Palestinians, they were starving them too. This is what I was trying to say last year. Those would be women, children under the age of 19, elderly people, injured or sick civilians. In turn, Israel will release, listen to this, 30 Palestinian children or minors or women. For the 5 female Israeli soldiers being held, 50 Palestinian prisoners will be freed. The exchange would begin with the release of 3 Israelis and then continue in small groups over the course of 7 weeks. Among the Palestinians to be freed would be 47 people who were arrested by Israel following a prisoner exchange in 2011. So they've been in jail all that time. Israel will also release all women and children it has detained since October 7th, 2023. During this period, there would be a temporary cessation of military operations by both sides. So then it gets into other phases. Eric, can you put the link to this in the chat so people can read the full article? I'll try to see if I can get Jeremy to come onto the show. But the reality is, this is something that Biden could have done all along. This is something that Biden could have done all along. Now, let's get to something else, because like I said, there is likely a reward for Netanyahu. Now, this has been leaked from Israeli media. They didn't say which network. They just said Israeli media. Israeli media claims Trump promised to allow Netanyahu to violate the Gaza ceasefire and resume the war after signing a deal. So again, remember where this is coming from. But it's my job to show you everything. Trump's gift bag also includes lifting all sanctions on Israel's spyware, Pegasus, and Israeli settlers and extremists, and allowing major West Bank land theft. So if I were to assume which one of these is more likely to happen, it's probably going to be the West Bank land theft. I think that is still going to happen. However, I'm not quite sure about he agreed to let Netanyahu continue to violate the ceasefire. I'm not quite sure about that. Again, this is coming from Israeli media, so take that into consideration. Still doesn't mean that that would not happen. I don't see why he would want that headache to continue. So just FYI, this could also be Israelis' media way of looking out for themselves and saying that, like, well, we said that he agreed to do this, and that behind the scenes. So just keep that in mind. Israel is known to lie, and Israeli media has been known to lie. So just keep that. But I would not be surprised if the land theft in the West Bank would continue. Because the ceasefire in Gaza is one thing, the West Bank thing is another thing, which either way that would have happened under Kamala or Trump. The West Bank land theft has been happening under Biden-Harris. It would have continued under Harris and Waltz, and it will continue under Trump. And why do I always forget his name? Vance, sorry. It would continue under Trump and Vance. Regardless which side would have won, that is one thing I know that would continue. And it's unfortunate and it sucks. But I will give credit where credit is due for the push for the ceasefire. And some people who called us all kind of names, blocked us and everything, for those of us supporting Jill Stein, some people like Mehdi Hasan, now they're trying to pretend like they didn't realize Biden was lying the whole time, right? So Mehdi Hasan is tweeting, some of us said a year ago that the U.S. president has the power to impose a deal and a ceasefire on Netanyahu and Israel. If President-elect Trump can do it, Biden could have done it for the past year. Shame on him and Blinken and the rest of them. Duh. That's what I said. That's what my comrades at RBN said. That's what Do Dissidents said. That's what pretty much almost everybody in independent media, for the most part, that has come correct on this issue has been saying all this time. But Mehdi Hasan wanted to shut us down. Mehdi Hasan didn't want to have those conversations with us because he knew that we were telling the truth. And his job is to stand and protect and defend the Democratic Party at all costs, even if it means selling out his own damn people. That's his job. Now his job is to come in and to pretend like, oh my God, I can't believe Biden and Harris lied. He knew they were lying the whole damn time. This is a part of the game. So you are going to see a number of people do this. Oh my God, this means Biden could have done this. I had no idea. Max Blumenthal, great point here. Had to check him. Fact check. You spent last October shaming Jill Stein voters for seeking to hold Biden and Blinken and Kamala accountable for the genocide they were carrying out and promised them that Trump will be even worse than Biden on Gaza. And you guys know Max always has receipts, right? So first screenshot. This is from Medi, October of last year. For anyone who doubts Trump will be even worse than Biden is on Gaza, here's Trump saying Netanyahu is doing a good job. Biden is trying to hold him back and probably should be doing the opposite. I'm glad that Bibi decided to do what he had to do. Sorry, but that's kind of how Medi sounds sometimes. Here's another one that he shared. To all the trolls in my replies today, answer me this. If it is so vital that Harris is defeated in order to stop the genocide, and that there's no difference on Gaza apparently between Trump and Harris, between the GOP and the Dems, why then do Benjamin Netanyahu and most Israelis want Trump to win, not Harris? Why did Itamar Ben-Gvir say they could do much more under Trump presidency? And why should I then ignore the clear desire and public intent of the people literally doing the genocide and listen instead to you? So this is the pompous asshole part of him coming out, right? Here's another one where he retweeted Peter Dow. This is what you call straight up and shameless Trump minimization for some on the left. It's ridiculous. The only reason he hasn't done a genocide in Gaza is because he isn't currently in office. He has made it clear that when he is back in office, Netanyahu will be allowed to kill even more people than he is killing right now. He just said so on Friday. As for Trump never having done a genocide anywhere, well, the erased people of Yemen would like a word. Peter, sheesh. You see what I'm saying? So this dude is opposition. His job is to defend the Democratic Party at all costs, no matter if they're wrong. Like if you couldn't even do the right thing when it came to a genocide, that right there lets you know. So now Mehdi Hassan, is melting down. If we go back here and we'll go to another one. There's another one that he tweeted where he said he's owed an apology. That one really cracked me up. Oh my God. He feels that he's owed an apology. Let's go here. And like I said, there's a reason why you won't see him go after them that way. We'll see if I can find it, guys. I know it's on here unless he removed it, because I know a lot of people were coming after that one. I think Glenn Greenwald retweeted that one as well, because he was just like, what the hell? Because all of us remember. Here it is. He feels he's owed an apology. Joe Biden, Antony Blinken, and every other U.S. official and member of Congress who lied about Israel accepting previous deals on the table and lied about Hamas being the ones who blocked it owe the rest of us an apology. And he says from the horse's mouth. And that's the clip that I showed you guys earlier there. So I would say that people like you, Mehdi, owe us an apology. Those of us who said we would not support Kamala Harris or Donald Trump, those of us that were voting third party, you owe us an apology. If anyone that needs to be apologizing here is you. The rest of us told people what Joe Biden and Kamala were doing. We knew what their so-called strategy was. We knew that they were lying. And Mehdi knew that they were lying too. But again, his job is to defend them at all costs. So now you see people are starting to melt down. And I'm going to tell you this. It hasn't happened yet, but I got to say this. If Donald Trump pulls off this ceasefire, and Biden's trying to take credit, don't forget what the articles have said. It was Trump who pushed them and forced them into it. If he pulls off this ceasefire, I don't see the Democratic Party coming back from this. Because what Trump is doing is he's showing you what the president can do. And what Biden did is he showed you what the president didn't want to do. It's crazy times. Again, I'll give credit where credit's due. I'll give credit for him forcing them into this. I'm still upset about the West Bank, of course, always will be. But I give credit for him, for Trump forcing them into this. And trust me, it's not easy for me to say this, but I do give credit for that. Again, things can change. Crazy times, folks. Crazy times. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.